spanking is abuse. And I feel like I have pretty strong convictions in this.
Were you spanked as a kid?
Yeah.
So was I.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you it didn't do anything productive. Low maintenance is a scam invented to make people accept less support, and the permission to be fully ourselves wasn't. I think that that's like the most concise. Welcome back to another episode of Sessions for the Soul.
Yes, welcome back. It's good to be back.
Yes, we're doing it. We're just making it happen. Kayla and I were saying before this that we had really high hopes for this year of like being super prepared for like the month of January, and life happens.
Yeah, it just does. I think it's a good reminder that like you can have all the plans like laid out and you have like this ideal picture of what things are going to look like, and then real life happens, and you have to be flexible and adjust, and it's just part of life. We're just experiencing that with the podcast.
Absolutely. And like, I think sometimes coming here, it's so refreshing, right? We're just making it happen. We're living, we're doing it.
Yeah. I love it. I love our time doing this.
Me too. Fun. It's a nice break from my current, just like from work and all the things. It's like, when we come here, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's a nice little like refresh and a nice place to just do what we love and talk and philosophize and do the human thing. So yeah.
I love it. It's fun. Well, should we dive in with an I said what I said?
Absolutely. I'm going to let you take it away. As you know, listen, mine is probably going to be like controversial and silly, but I'm wildly unprepared for this today. So here we go.
And mine is wildly heavy. So my I said what I said is spanking is abuse. And I feel like I have pretty strong convictions in this. Mm-hmm. And I feel nervous about, other people's thoughts on this, and the thoughts of like, well, you don't even have kids. So, just wait till you have kids. But honestly, I think that just highlights the problem with it of like, spanking oftentimes comes from a place of like your own dysregulation and from a place of power and control and trying to assert authority and trying to get immediate compliance. And I just think it's so problematic, and research supports that. So I feel pretty good about my stance in this.
And I support you.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way. Were you spanked as a kid?
Yeah.
So was I.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you it didn't do anything productive. Like, I don't feel like I didn't have like physically abusive parents by any means, but like, I don't feel like the results that they were seeking were ever achieved from being spanked.
Right.
So it really just did nothing.
Yeah.
Burke is just like having a good time with my paper here. So yeah, I mean, you know what? I amplify what you're saying. I totally agree.
Yeah. Maybe it's like parents feeling underprepared for like how to handle, the really tough situations that of course happen with kids where you're just like pushed over the edge. Or maybe it's like, well, I was spanked as a kid and I turned out fine, or I don't know what it is, but I think there are so many resources out there now to like do better as a parent and to also learn how to regulate your own emotions so that you can actually teach your child, like, this is what it looks like to be a regulated adult. And your tantrum, your meltdown isn't going to move my solid foundation of regulation. Like, I'm the adult here. I'm going to act like an adult instead of physically harm you to try and get compliance in this moment. Like,
well, absolutely. I think it teaches like, what I really think it teaches is that like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this emotion in my body. And so violence is an okay outlet, or like expressing anger in a physical way is an okay outlet. And then that teaches your child that that's okay. Right. And, like, I don't have children of my own, but I have been an integral part in young children's raising and their life. And, I'm here to say like, I don't know, my sister's never been a spanker. Like, she's very much like let's talk about it. And all of the adults around are that way. Like,
Yeah.
Nobody has exercised that. And I think it's like the stance of like, you don't have kids. That's just someone trying to justify their own discomfort with what's being said, I think, because, you can literally raise amazing humans without ever physically laying a hand on them. And there's so many ways to teach like boundaries, that's not okay, that aren't physically harming someone.
Yeah. And it just like when you think about long-term effects, like, right, you're getting short-term compliance because it's fear-based. You're literally harming your child to get compliance out of them. But long-term, like the mental health implications, the lack of trust between and safety between parent and child,
the shame.
Yeah, like it just goes on and on and on. Even like I think it's like if you were raised, being spanked growing up, and especially like as it kind of goes up on the scale of like severity, or if other things were used, your likelihood to then do that to your children or to like approve of violence in general is way higher. So it's like so many different impacts that it's having.
Yeah.
And again, like in a world where we have so much like free education and information right at our fingertips, like we have, like it almost feels like there's no excuse. Like, do better. We can do better as a society.
Yes, absolutely. And something that's coming to mind as you're saying that is like our brains actually, especially at that age when we're children, our brains cannot differentiate between big T's and little T's.
Yeah.
And so like maybe you're like, well, I've swatted my kid on the butt once or twice.
Yeah.
Their brain can't discern between like, oh, well, that wasn't that bad because they could have beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that there are implications, and yes, like there's a scale of severity of those implications, but really all together, like I promise it's doing more damage than it is good.
It is. And when you think of it from like the nervous system perspective and like just the brain, like your physiology changes when you're experiencing a trauma of some sort, or this break in safety, and it affects the way that your brain and your nervous system develops. And so that's where it's like these long-term implications are very real.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, it lies on like a spectrum, but it's not just this like benign thing. There's all sorts of implications. So yeah, that's mine for the day.
I love that. One sec. Burke. No. There we go. You guys, before I continue with mine, we love Burke, okay? We've been having the craziest time with this boy. It's been challenging. But you know what? We're getting through it. And honestly, he's just part of the show now, huh?
He used to be part of the show in like a more calm and collected way, just
in like a positive
an appearance sometimes. I don't know what this version of him is.
I feel like it stresses Kayla out, you guys. And that's the opposite of what we need right now. Like we need less stress for Kayla. Sit. Okay, lay down. No.
Fine.
So mine, I'm going to pull mine up while Burke is figuring out what his life is. Okay, so there's I just feel like all of mine are in comparison to yours. They're just silly, but
we love a silly one.
This one, okay, I've got a couple on here that I do think I will be pulling out one time or another, but I'm gonna say this one right now. Well, there's two that are pretty good, but let's go with this. Being low maintenance is a scam invented to make people accept less.
Ooh. Okay.
I said what I said. Yeah. Because I really think it is. Like being low maintenance, like we celebrate that. Like, oh, super low maintenance.
Yeah. Like, what does it mean to be low maintenance? And like, what's the comparison or like the scale, or like, how are you defining low maintenance when you say that about yourself?
Yeah. Or like if you are in a relationship and you're like, oh, my partner's super low maintenance, so you get to be lazy. What the fuck are you saying to me? Yeah, I think it's like, it's okay to not be low maintenance, and it's okay to like be like, no, I actually like really am clear on like this standard or this thing that I like or this thing I desire, whatever. Like insert thing here that would be seen as high maintenance.
Yeah.
And celebrate that and be okay with it, because I think being low maintenance is 100% like, it's another one of those modern scams of like designed to just make us be like, oh yeah, I actually,
yeah.
And spoiler, whoever the low maintenance individual is, being low maintenance is not benefiting you. It's benefiting the other person.
The other person, yeah. Who, like, I don't have to put much effort in, especially in a relationship.
Absolutely.
Dynamic. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like for a long time, I always was like, you know, like in friendships or relationships or whatever, I'd be like, oh, I'm super low maintenance. Like I can be flexible, no worries. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize that's actually just my people pleasing, like just showing itself.
Yeah. And like our self-worth episode of like, oh gosh, maybe I'm like not worthy of like this time or attention or the money
or asking
like,
for this.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Like I don't have much to say besides that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a scam. You guys stop being low maintenance, ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to have the high standard or to be high maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too. Cool. Okay. Well, we're going to just keep trucking along here. Burke brought a ball over.
This is crazy.
Kayla wants to literally, I don't know what she wants to do, you guys, but I support it and I understand it. Sit. Can you sit? Sit. I think chewing the ball is great, but I think you need to lay down while you do it. Lay down. I would love for everyone to let us know in the comments, if you're watching on YouTube, what your thoughts are when this is happening.
And if you have any suggestions.
No, literally. We've tried everything.
You might be wondering, why don't you put him in a room and he'll bark and cry the whole time?
We've tried. Honey, we've tried everything. So yeah, any suggestions are welcome. Lay down. Believe it or not, he ran before this.
3 times this morning, like some serious ball catching.
Sit. Okay, guys. So today's episode.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the mother wound, which I feel is a great topic. Might feel a little heavy, or it's a deeper topic, I think, than what we've been covering so far this year. So I'm excited to dive into it. Yeah. We have so many good notes.
We have a lot of notes. You guys, I went crazy on the notes. But yeah, I'm really excited about this too, because I think like even as I was like refreshing on what we can bring to this conversation, it was like, oh, there were moments that I was having of like, oh, that is such a good point. And I was going through this book I read a few years ago, and I've kind of been thumbing through it recently. But I'm like, oh, I want to really like reread this, because I think what we find when we kind of look at the mother wound is so much good information about ourselves, our own journeys, and kind of society as a whole. And it's like, it's a thing we all have, men and women alike. And obviously I think for women, it's a little bit more, it can be more like tender for us because of like, one of the quotes that I was reading yesterday was like, not every woman is a mother, but every woman is a daughter. And so we are we're affected by this thing, right?
I think it makes perfect sense. Like, how could we not be affected, right? And I think it might be good to start this out by just recognizing like this isn't the topic of like the mother wound or anything related to parents isn't coming from a place of like blame.
Yeah.
It's coming from a place of just like understanding the generational impact that of course is present. How could it not be present? Like we all are, like all of these patterns are passed down generationally.
Absolutely.
And when you sit down and have conversations, with like your mom or other moms, and you start to recognize like, oh, okay, this is something that they experienced in their upbringing or that they didn't get in their upbringing. And this is how it showed up, when they were parenting and when they were mothering. And I think coming at it from a place of just understanding rather than blame, and holding space for like maybe some grief and sadness or hurt or pain, right? So yeah, I think just stating that up
Absolutely.
front.
I think that that's so important in general when we're dissecting these issues, like when it comes to familial wounds, generational trauma, the mother wound, parenting, all of it. Because the thing is it's not about blame, because you can follow the thread back so many generations.
Yes.
You can follow these threads back and you can see where the threads have, like have been released. You can see how there's been improvement. You can see all of these things when you kind of dissect these issues or these wounds. And it's like the book that I would say I got like my most understanding of the mother wound on is by Bethany Webster. It's called Discovering the Inner Mother. And she starts the book literally saying like, this is not about blaming our mothers. It's about women embracing like ourselves, our gifts, our capacity without shame, and being able to like expand our capacity and our consciousness, right? And holding space for transforming emotional pain into something supportive. Because the thing is like I think what happens is, especially when it comes to the mother wound, if something wasn't received or if we have internalized pain and we're unconsciously giving that on to our children, um, or if we're the child that's become consciously aware of like, oh, this is not quite right, the only thing we can do is embrace it to like transform it and to talk about it. Like if we don't talk about it, then we never have like we can't have this awareness, or like we can't share this conscious like experience where there's room for change, or there's room for like, oh, what does this mean for us, or how do we transform this for the next generation, for ourselves, for our mothers? Like
Mm-hmm.
when we heal, it goes both ways down the line. It goes backward and it goes
Mm-hmm.
forward, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. A few months ago, my sister, or like a few weeks ago, I don't know, we were talking about our mother wound, and she said to me, when you become a parent and you're reparenting in moments and you like have that moment of awareness where you're doing something different for your kids, it like gets emotional sometimes, because you're
Mm-hmm.
not just reparenting yourself in that moment. You're being the mom you wish that like our mom had, you wish that our grandma had. And it goes like all over all these different lineages. And that like made me so emotional, because I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. And there's
Mm-hmm.
grief in it, like you mentioned, like,
Mm-hmm.
because this can be tender to be like, damn, it's a bummer that like
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get someone to show up for them in this way when they needed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I love that thought of it's not just healing your own experience and your children or future children's experience, but also working backwards as well. I think that's a really beautiful like picture to think of. And it makes sense too, especially if you're, having these conversations or having open communication and acknowledgement around like, yeah, these things, this is just the experience that we had. These are some of the things that, I wish that I could have had in my upbringing or in the relationship with my mom, or these are the things that, I acknowledge could have been different. And I'm going to show up differently with my children. And yeah, I can't even imagine how emotional that would feel to be in that moment, like your sister mentioned, and to like have kind of an emotional experience of like, ooh, I was able to just give this to my kid, especially my daughter, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I felt was maybe like missing or a void of some sort or an unmet need of mine in my upbringing. And yeah, that would be a really tender
Yeah.
experience, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It is, because, and like I think it is for so many different things. The thing about the mother wound is it's so nuanced, and we're going to get into that today, some of those nuances, but it is so beautiful. Like the ability to actually like recognize and heal and any wound and any generational or anything with a family is really beautiful. And I think when we are able to just like recognize like, wow, this is powerful. Like this is
Yeah.
like, honestly, sometimes it's really beautiful to like, this could sound like, I don't know, it could sound bad, you guys, but I don't mean it that way. But like to kind of say, like, wow, I have the power to change this. I have the
Mm-hmm.
power to rewrite this thing for all of us. And I can be brave enough to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of is like, it's almost like our duty. Like in codependency, we like talk about like how it feels like our sacred duty is like to sacrifice ourselves for like the emotional support of others. But it actually is our sacred duty to like rewrite these stories and to heal
Mm-hmm.
generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're able to do it and show up and do it, like that's really powerful,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, so just to like explain a little bit what the mother wound is, because I think that that might help people. Really, one second. Let me just find my note here. The mother wound is what happens when love was there, but emotional support and the permission to be fully ourselves wasn't. I think that that's like the most concise, short way to describe it. There's like, this is super nuanced, and there's so many other ways we can like dive into this, and like elements and aspects of it that we can address. But like, really, it's the thing that is like, there's love. We can acknowledge that like a lot of us had love as kids, but maybe the emotional support or the validation or like even the autonomy of self, like
Mm-hmm.
these things weren't necessarily there. And one thing that like this could be controversial, I guess, this is systematic, and this like actually is a societal issue in ways, because the thing is, our mothers experience this too, and their mothers experience this too. And depending on how far back in the line you go and you think about like what women have experienced for generations, like this can, and what has been passed down and what has been upheld and kept in
Yeah.
that line, right? It looks different for all of us, and like
Yeah.
it's on a spectrum. But I do think that that is relative to this conversation.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting thing to think about the cultural influence on like systemic issues of how people are showing up in their life, right? And so in this episode, we're talking about moms and how moms are showing up and experiencing life and experiencing motherhood, and how daughters are experiencing that as well. And we can apply this to really almost anything in life, right?
Yeah.
Where there's this systemic element based on the cultural influence that's happening. And not everyone is like fully immersed in like the cultural experience, but most people are, right? Because
Right.
that's what it is. It's the cultural experience. And so
Totally.
every generation, it's interesting to think about how the cultural influence looked so different for each generation. If we think about like the feminist movement, which maybe that could be, and I said what I said at some point, but like the feminist movement and what that did for moms and how that impacted, um, being at home or engaging with their kids or being in the workforce, and like the push and pull of that whole experience. And you can go back all sorts of generations and look at big cultural movements that were happening and how that impacts the way that moms and dads and whoever are showing up in their life. And yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to like dive even deeper on, to like really look at the generational changes that were happening in the cultural
Absolutely. And
experience.
I mean, like, and if you go back far enough, right? Like, even if we go like to like I would say like what my great great grandmother, like
Mm-hmm.
to them and like what they were experiencing, right? Like those were also women who probably, I think I have so much to say about all of this. And I think reading Bethany Webster's book is like really powerful for anybody listening who like wants to dive more into this
Mm-hmm.
topic.
Yeah.
Because there's so much good information, but like we learn from our mothers how to show up, right? And like how to interact with the world so often. We learn from
Yeah.
both of our parents, but as women especially,
Mm-hmm.
how do I show up in relationships?
Yeah.
We're like clocking like, oh, this is how you have a husband.
Yep.
This is how you relate. And if we go back to a couple generations ago, late 1800s, early 1900s, my grandma was born in 1941.
Mm-hmm.
Um, her mom, like what she
Mm-hmm.
witnessed was this woman who really was like sacrificing herself in order
Mm-hmm.
to fit into a man's life. And so I don't even necessarily mean men all the time. I think that can be taken like so out of context depending on like so many different like perspectives and beliefs, etc. But my point is that there's like these generations that were being encouraged to like not follow their dreams, stay small, not do certain things, not go against the grain. Or if you were like a louder or bolder woman, like even my grandma's generation experienced this thing of like, well, don't be too opinionated and don't be too this and don't be too that. And so then like the pendulum swung the other way and it's like liberation for all.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, how do we find the balance in that? And I think I don't know where you find the balance in that. I think we're all still learning because,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on so many factors, right? But one of the things that I think is really important is recognizing that, like, I genuinely believe all parents, all mothers did the best they could with what the culture required and with their knowledge, with what
Yeah.
they had. I really don't think that, I think mothers did the best they could with what they had in order to survive. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time when you're in early parenthood, those younger years that are the most impactful for children,
Mm-hmm.
especially new mothers, depending on how young or old you are, like you're in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
It like brings out this like innate thing inside of you. And so depending on what's externally happening,
Mm-hmm.
or what is culturally happening, what your home life is like, the environment you're raising kids in, you're doing what you are doing in order to survive and what you
Mm-hmm.
think and understand to be the best choice. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really important in this conversation too, just to like go back to that thing you were saying about we're not trying to blame anyone here, totally recognizing that like this is one of the nuances
Mm-hmm.
that are like moms are doing what they know. And
Yeah.
I think until more recently, right, there
Yeah.
wasn't all the information to help us like dissect and look at like, hey, maybe this wasn't the best way, or
Yeah.
oh, when I do this, I'm actually harming my kids, or like when
Yeah.
I'm spanking or using
Yeah.
fear as a form of discipline, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm thinking about how like the statement you made about survival and how survival has looked so different just in the last few generations, right? If we think
Yeah.
about our like ancestors who immigrated here from around the world, survival looked very,
Very
very
different.
different for them, right? Our moms were, or the moms in that generation were surviving in a whole different way and protecting their kids and keeping the home and serving their husband and like all these different things because survival looked different then.
Yeah.
And then you go a generation forward and a generation forward, and it keeps evolving and looking different depending on the context of the world at that time.
Yeah.
And not just the world, but also the family system of like where you're at financially, your security, your actual safety of the home, and like your ability to provide food and like shelter and all of these like
Yeah.
necessities. And so survival looks so different. And now today, survival and protection of your kids looks very different in the world of technology, right? And also information. And do I vaccinate? Do I not vaccinate? Do I engage with this system or not? Do I put them in school because there's risks there, or do I homeschool? Like there's so many different ways that moms are trying to survive and protect these days
Mm.
than generations ago. And so it's interesting just to think about that context and how these things continue to evolve. And as we become moms someday, and as our kids, grow up to be parents, it's going to look very different for them. And so the context will evolve again.
Absolutely. Like when you were saying that, I had chills because it's so true. And I feel like we're kind of in, you know, I guess every generation has been in unprecedented times because it was
Yes.
unprecedented for the time.
Yep. Yeah.
But we're like, I mean, it's overwhelmed. Like my parents always say this to my dad especially feels this. He feels like not sorry, I guess isn't the word, but he has so much fear for my sisters and I as parents in this world.
Mm.
He really feels like raising kids today is kind of scary, because of the age of information and technology and
Yeah.
social media and the internet and the vastness of like
Yeah.
all these spaces online
Yeah.
and just kind of some of the climates of the world today. And it's interesting because it's like he was raising kids in the 90s
Mhm.
and early 2000s. And I'm like, in one way I can look back and be like, yeah, I would have loved to raise some kids in the 90s, like eat some fucking dirt and go like outside. Like, my
Yeah.
parents were very like, my mom would lock us outside during the day. She'd be like, go outside and play. doors locked, I'd be like, I have to pee. She'd be like,
I
you
love
know how
that.
to squat. I'm cleaning. See you later. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
She would like lock us outside sometimes. And I just think that like, I don't like my sister could never do that to her kids. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's different. And
it's a
it's
different
interesting
world.
because when we have kids and they grow up to then start planning a family, they'll be like, gosh, I wish I could have been raising kids in the
When we were kids.
20s.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So,
In the 20s.
yeah.
Stop.
Oh my God.
That's so funny.
So it is interesting how every generation will have some sense of that, of like, oh gosh, like it felt so much safer then, or you guys at least didn't have this risk, or it felt
Totally.
easier, or whatever. Like you always look back and feel like, oh, that was the golden era, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wish I could have
absolutely.
experienced that. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, just how these things shift generationally, especially when it comes to the mother wound.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, another one of the nuances I think that you can maybe like provide some insight to is because like of your somatic and nervous system background is talking about like mirroring and permission and
Mm-hmm.
how this is really relative. Um, you know, because our moms, we learn, right? We've talked about this before in other episodes, how we learn sort of like boundaries, how to honor our emotional experiences, how to claim our power, our to acknowledge our anger, all of these things through how it's mirrored to us from our mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And when our moms have whatever, like, I don't mean this to sound negative, but if our moms were in a situation where they suppressed any of that or their own needs or their own um had a trouble with had trouble with boundaries, had a lack of boundaries, weren't able to express their emotional experience in a healthy
Mm-hmm.
way, that's mirrored to the children, to the daughters specifically, like because you know women do learn, are it's no different than like a son is learning more from his father on how,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We are learning from our mothers in this context how to do that,
Yeah.
and what happens when our moms aren't able to healthily do that,
Yeah.
and what that does
Yeah.
to our nervous system and to our ability, to
Yeah.
express all of that ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating. And we talked about this in like maybe one of our first few episodes, but like the attunement to, like, from child to parent, especially mom, like mom is so key in like the building of your nervous system and the patterns and the mirroring that we have mirror neurons, right? And so we want to mimic that of our primary caregiver, which is usually our mom. And so when we start to experience from literally infancy on, it just looks a little bit different as we age. When we start to experience and pick up on the cues of like, oh, mom is shutting down. Oh, mom doesn't seem to, know how to regulate her emotions. She, snaps at us so easily. She becomes really irritable, or she retreats and completely like withdraws from the family. And where did mom go? And why isn't she like really available
Mm-hmm.
emotionally? Like she's here, but she's not. Like we pick up on all of those things, and the notes here too on even things like sexuality and intimacy and like embodied like sensuality, right? Like how does mom feel about her whole being?
Being, yeah.
Yeah, how is she engaging with, the other parent in the household if there's another parent? So like all of these things kids are picking up on, and again mirroring that within their own nervous system. And it's also building like the template and the blueprint for as they get older and when they start to show up in relationships and have their own kids. And that's where I think it's so important to have some of these insights and to have some of these reflections around recognizing like, oh, this was maybe a deficit, or this is like an unmet need that I have. And sometimes those show up. I've even noticed this recently, actually a few days ago when I was grocery shopping, and I saw a mom and a daughter, and there was an interaction that I felt was really sweet. And it, for some reason, and I, mom, I know you listen and I love you so much. But it like brought up some emotion within me where I was like, oh gosh, like that was such a sweet interaction. And for some reason, it just elicited a little bit of like a tender moment for me.
Yeah.
And So sometimes the awareness comes from those moments where you're like just having normal day-to-day life experiences. You're not in a therapy session and you're like, ooh, why is that like,
Tender.
tender for me? Yeah. And so using those things as information to get kind of curious about that and to then say, okay, well, how am I going to show up differently? Maybe I didn't experience a lot of, I didn't witness a lot of regulation. How can I invite that into my life as an adult now? Maybe I didn't experience a lot of physical affection between maybe mom and child or witness between mom and dad. How can I try and repattern that in my adult life and do something different? So it's having that awareness and then choosing, like you said, like making an active choice to like do something different and to like break those generational cycles.
Absolutely. Yes. I love everything you said. And I think that that's the work, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the work. And that's why talking about the mother wound and understanding it's really important because, um, those things that weren't maybe aren't aligned with where we're at in our own life or who we want to be or how we want to show up. The awareness is the key to actually like rewiring those patterns and
Mm-hmm.
also just really acknowledging that sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
is. Sometimes we catch ourselves in the moment of repeating the pattern and it's that like moment where that comes online and it's like, oh gosh, okay, wait, I
Mm-hmm.
need to take a step back here and I need to evaluate how to do this
Yeah.
differently because when stuff is hardwired in us,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's so hard to even
Mm-hmm.
notice the tendency, the behavior, the pattern because
Yeah.
like you and I have talked about before on here is a lot of this hardwiring is like sort of complete by like a really young age.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, and now we're in our 20s or our 30s and we've got to try to figure out how to rewrite this and that can be difficult, that can be um like and I don't want to like scare anybody with this, but it does take work.
Mm-hmm.
It takes emotional work, it takes vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
and it also takes I think a lot of compassion for our moms. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of compassion to forgive, to love them,
Yeah.
and there's a whole journey you go on with that, right? I think it really is like the stages of grief in a way because you're grieving some
Mm-hmm.
of the things you didn't receive, right? I know when I was younger, for a lot of years, there was a lot of anger with my mom for
Mm-hmm.
some of these things. And I felt angry. I was like, ooh, but when I was able to like take a step back, what that turned into is like deep compassion and deep empathy because it was like, oh, actually, she
Mm-hmm.
showed up this way because she didn't know anything different.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what she did to survive. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what she knows.
Yeah.
And like when we are able to see our mothers in that light, it's like, ooh, I have so much love and compassion for you
Mm-hmm.
because you were just doing your best and you
Yep.
too, like, didn't receive things you needed. You
Yep.
too didn't have your what like you know your you were just doing what you knew because of what was required of you in whatever environment and
Mm-hmm.
I can see how that didn't
Mm-hmm.
how that has led to whatever, right? And for all of us and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like goes to the next piece being that when we don't see these things mirrored or like that embodiment, like you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about, how that does create this like idea that in order to be loved, I need to insert thing here, be quieter, be smaller, self-abandon, people please, um, be emotionally self-sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
be hyper independent, right? All of these things contribute to these patterns where as adults that might show up like people pleasing, it might show up like over responsibility, perfectionism, a lack of boundaries, um a fear of being seen, it can show up
Mm-hmm.
in so many different ways. And so all of this is relative to like maybe our listeners are hearing this and thinking about their own patterns. I know like when I dissect this stuff, I'm like LOL. Like I can dissect so many behaviors that go
Yeah.
go down this line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, it just goes to show like the things that are happening in our early years have like lasting impacts on how we develop and how we show up in our adult life. And if we feel like we have to, shrink ourselves or to morph into something that doesn't feel really authentic, but I know if I behave this way, maybe I'll get like the acknowledgement from my mom or the parent. Or if I say this thing or do this thing, then I'll get the hug or like whatever it is, then I'll avoid the consequence, right? And so we start to learn like if this, then that.
Mm.
And that's where the people pleasing and the self abandoning and all of these behaviors start to really show up.
Yeah.
And to also, I love the emotionally self sufficient statement there too, because you might have so many unmet needs from your mom, and you start to learn like, she's not a source for me to get my emotional needs met, to feel love and cared for, or fill in the blank of all the emotional needs that we have growing up. So I need to do that myself. I need to like take control over this myself and figure out how to get those needs met. And then that's fun to work through as an adult, because then, you show up in relationships and you're like, no, but I'm going to try and meet this need myself. And it kind of goes to this like low maintenance thing actually that you just mentioned
Yeah.
at the beginning of like, I don't need you to do these things for me, or I don't need you to show this kind of affection for me because I've got this. I've
Totally.
always got it's always been me.
Right. And I don't want to burden you.
Yes.
I don't want to be a burden. I don't want, if I ask too much, I know that you're going to, shut down, walk away from me, whatever. Right. Like,
yeah. You're like, I know how this goes.
Exactly. So like, it's like almost like a defense mechanism in a way too. Right.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. And like, it kind of brings me back to that phrase of like going to the hardware store for bread. As we get older, right. And we learn that, I think like one of two things can happen, one being like what you just mentioned, like the just like completely putting the walls up, shutting down, like I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
And then there's like the flip side of that coin of the people who like keep trying. And then they're, when you go to the hardware store for bread and you realize that this is not a bakery and you keep doing it, like it can be really painful because you're like having to re-grieve and like
over and
over. And also, I think what it really speaks to is the inner child who's like still driving the bus, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's really an act of like a radical act of self-love, I think, to just like be willing to be like, I need this thing and I can give it to myself right now, or I can go find someone in my support network who's able to support me in this way and kind of in a way accept like my mother doesn't have the capacity for this. And that's hard. I know it's hard, you guys. I've lived it. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I really have. And I think, that kind of like goes to this nuance about how sometimes healing the mother wound really is about grieving what wasn't received and really like not fixing or confronting our mothers, but instead accepting them and trying to repair the inherited rapture between the mother, the daughter, and like our femininity and our capacity to like repair and love, if that makes any sense.
It does. I was just thinking too, I had a thought about like these experiences that we're having in our childhood and how they show up in adulthood. If you didn't receive these things of like emotional, connection and care and affection, or whatever the unmet need is, as an adult, it's really quite challenging to then figure out like, wait, what does that even mean to be, loved or cared for, or to ask for my needs, because I don't even know what my needs are.
Totally.
Because I've suppressed that part of me forever, for as long as I can remember. And now as an adult, especially if you're like really deep in this work, if you're like going to therapy and like really working through some of these things, and you're having all of these things kind of uncovered, and you're like, wait, okay, but I don't even know what that means to be like fully like immersed in love and care.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to like recognize all of these patterns, and then it's a whole nother thing to like really understand, what do I even do about this at this point?
Yeah. And it's heavy. Like that is a heavy thing, and I love that you said that, because that's like That's real life. I think so often in like the culture around these conversations, like on social media or like, even in coaching or whatever, sometimes it's like, okay, like now here's some tools. But I
Mm-hmm.
think like really it's actually like so much more tender and like
Yeah.
deep than that. And like you said, it's like that whole other like layer of like going into it and exploring and understanding because, you know, um, when you were saying that, I was really thinking about like how when we see our mothers go through this and put other people's needs above her own,
Mm.
whether that be dreams, emotional needs, like boundaries, whatever, right? And then we learn that, especially super young, understanding like I think it like comes to that point of autonomy, like where do I end and somebody else begin? Because like sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
might think, well, I love taking care. I love putting
Mm-hmm.
someone else's needs before my own.
Mm-hmm.
But is that because like I have a strong sense of like where I end and another begins? Or is that because
Right.
like this is what's familiar and comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes, I think it's like when someone asks the questions like, well, what do you like to do? Or like, what's your, what do
Mm-hmm.
you like to do with your free time? That question sometimes can be like, I don't know
Yeah.
because I don't know who I am
Mm-hmm.
all the way, right?
Yeah.
Or if that question, makes you uncomfortable, it might be like the thing of, well, I'm not sure actually. I've never really like gotten clear on what that looks like for
Mm-hmm.
me or what I do enjoy or
Yeah.
what I do need. And that's a really powerful place to kind of go explore, get in the weeds
Mm-hmm.
and dig around because when you start to uncover those parts of yourself is when you can start to like really understand like, so what does it mean
Mm-hmm.
to prioritize that for myself? Or what does it look like um when I prioritize joy or I
Mm-hmm.
prioritize like my emotional well-being,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And I think approaching it from number one, like creating space for the grief and the
Yeah.
the pain and the sadness, and approaching it with curiosity and exploration, and
Yeah.
maybe even like a little bit of excitement of like, wow, I get to kind of explore what these things look like for me. I get to explore what it means to, be seen and to put
Mm.
myself first, or to not shrink myself, or to say no to things that I really don't want to do, and or the things that I enjoy doing, or how I can, give and receive affection. What kind of touch feels good? If I have a daughter, how can I maybe explore that together of like, maybe we don't give a lot of hugs or a lot of whatever the thing is, right? And like,
Yeah.
how can we explore that? Because maybe there's an unmet need there too. And so it's like that balance of grieving and being curious in like a, oh, this could actually be a really cool journey that I'm about to
Absolutely.
embark on.
Yeah, I think that openness is key, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like an exploration for sure. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like excavating like a
Yeah.
like a
Mm-hmm.
site or like being an archaeologist.
Delicately over
Yeah,
time. Yeah, it's
uncovering.
it's not the 5 journal prompts that you found on social media that are gonna like do it for
No,
you.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's gonna be like it's almost like the word that's coming to mind is like a deep tenderness.
Yeah.
It
Mm-hmm.
takes like tenderness and a lot of self-compassion
Yeah.
and just like an open heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, yeah, and sometimes it also takes finding what really is not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be,
That's part of the journey.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Being like, wait a second. I thought this might be it. And we're going to turn this car around. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
No, I love that. It's a fun journey. It can be a fun journey.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like one thing we should maybe touch on before we wrap up here is like, what are some ways that we can invite people if they're struggling with this to, I mean, I feel like we actually have touched on this. I don't know what I'm saying, but like, really understanding.
One very like practical real life, my actual life example
Yeah, yeah.
that I feel comfortable sharing, like and working through some of these things, is something that my siblings and I have always recognized is like, we didn't grow up with a ton of like physical affection.
Yeah.
Of course we did grow up with some, and of course we knew our parents loved us and all those things, but in the spirit of just recognizing like sometimes there are unmet needs and things could have looked different, we can recognize that. And my mom has also shared like that was something that she experienced. And so this is one of those things to highlight. This is a generational thing.
Yeah,
So you have a
absolutely.
parent who maybe didn't, offer a ton of physical affection to her kids, but also she didn't experience that. And most likely her mom didn't experience that, and so on and so on. And so the way to then begin addressing that, or a way to begin addressing that, is one, acknowledge it, right? Just like name it,
Yeah.
right? We can just name it and be like, oh, now as adults, we feel really awkward giving hugs. Like we're just not really huggy people. And to do it anyway, to like say it and
Yes.
to be like, we're actually going to hug each other. We're going, if we haven't seen you in a while, or I'm going to hug you goodbye because we just had a family dinner, and we're going to say, I love you, even if it feels awkward because you're my mom or you're my sister, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and the sister element too, I think is a really important thing of just like the healing that can come within sisters in the
Absolutely.
mother wound. And so being able to just name it and speak it out loud, and it doesn't, it's sometimes it can be a really deep thing, but sometimes it can just be the thing of like, hey, I'm noticing that like none of us hug each other and
Yeah,
that's weird, and we all feel weird about it, so let's like all just make an effort to do it, and we can all feel weird about it, but at some point it's going to be normal. And then we're setting ourselves up for when we have kids, like this is a new pattern that we're shifting, and it's
absolutely.
not coming from a place of like blame or shame or anything like that. It's coming from a place of just recognizing and making an active choice to do something different.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much and relate to it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my sister and I, we our joke is that we like because we are together often. We spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time together.
Yeah.
We see each other like almost every day, I would say.
Yeah.
And there's been like a point over the last couple of years where I'm like, should we hug?
Yeah.
And we both just like look at each other and she like oh she always laughs. But I'm like, hold on, I feel like we should hug because like, like we never do that. And sometimes it's like a thing. And what's really funny is her and I like slept in the same bed together for
Yeah.
11 years of my life.
Yeah. You guys are very close.
We're very close. And I'm like, we never touch.
Yeah.
And I actually said to her a few years ago, I was like, wait, I think you and I need to touch more because we're gonna die together. And um, like if you're dying, I want to hold your hand. And if I'm dying, I want you to like, be able to hold my hand. And
Yeah.
she started laughing so hard. I was like, well, we never touch. Like, we
Yeah.
need to get used
We
to
need to
this.
start normalizing this now.
Yeah, because it's like, babe, we're sitting like you're my life partner. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yes.
we need to do this.
Yeah.
And so we've made it a point to like actually now we like laugh about it. I'm like, come here, I'm gonna hug you. And and there's actually been space
Uh-huh.
since we've started to do that in more tender and vulnerable moments when
Yeah.
one of us is having an emotional experience where it's like, I'm gonna come hug you right now
Yeah.
because I love you.
And there's space to receive that
Yes.
versus like had you guys not just named it and like started to kind of even be silly about it at first,
Yes.
where you like your body, your nervous system starts to realize like, oh, this is actually comforting, this is soothing for me. So then in those moments where it's like, no, this is actually like tender or emotionally charged, like
Yeah.
this is actually going to be a soothing thing for me instead of like something where I like brace or bristle at,
Yes. Where it's like, oh, you know what? Like we're safe here together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting to like follow that thread. But no, I love that example. And I think that that's so
Yeah.
important. And you touched on something that is like the essence of this whole thing of like, we didn't receive something maybe because my mother didn't receive something because
Uh-huh.
her mother didn't
Yeah.
receive something. And that's the thing like that we're talking about here. And that's like the essence of what this all is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that line that goes all the way back and we don't even know how far it goes back for most of us.
Yeah.
And the impacts that makes. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like my work in coaching previously has really been around like this wounding, especially growing up like in a deeply codependent environment and things like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, I go through different phases with this journey because
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting thing to work so hard on healing it and to stay in such close proximity
Mm-hmm.
to each other because like you get real life like experience with it all the time. And sometimes like one thing I want to just normalize for everybody listening is you will repeat patterns no matter what. You will repeat patterns when you're parenting.
Yeah.
If you were doing this work before becoming a parent, don't use whatever repeating happens as means to beat yourself up, because it's gonna happen. I don't even have children, and I've repeated things, and I reflect on that, and I feel like, oh my gosh, like I could have showed up better for my nephews and my niece in that moment. And it's like, then, you kind of have that like moment of like, ugh, I wanted to do better. And you know what? Now I get to do better in the future, and I get to make the repair, and I get to try all these other things that are important too, just as important as, doing better in the first place. And also normalizing that, there's going to be moments in relationships or whatever where you're relearning, re-exploring, maybe taking steps forward and taking steps back, or going in circles. Like, that's part of any journey. And I think this is one of those that's like, it's a lifelong one, I don't think it ever just, because like, think about too, one day we're going to be our mother's age, and what wisdom we'll have then. And they'll be, these old grandmothers. Like, I think about my 84-year-old grandma, and like, that's going to be my mom one day. And I know, it makes me so emotional, like in the best, in like the saddest and best way, because it's like, what a gift. And also like, what love and compassion and what new understanding will we have of this wound, this line, then,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, showing yourself compassion and grace and just all of those things, like just recognizing like this is part of the human experience, is to, go through these journeys and to repeat old patterns, even if you thought you worked through them, because there's this really big trigger that's coming up for you. Like, all of these things are so normal. And so, don't beat yourself up. It's just part of the experience.
Absolutely. I think that's our cue.
Yeah, this is a wonderful place to end. Thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week.